Hi, Steve Gale here. In this demo, what we're going to do is we're going to create a VPC using the AWS Management Console. And we're also going to create some subnets, configure a security group, and we're going to launch an EC2 instance into a VPC according to this diagram. So if you look at this diagram here, we've got within our region, we've got two availability zones. Spanning those two availability zones, we've got a VPC. And within each availability zone, we've got a public subnet and a private subnet in availability zone A, and also a public subnet and a private subnet in availability zone B. We've got a NAT gateway in the public subnet 1, 10.0.0.0, and we've got a web server, which is wrapped in a security group or firewall in the public subnet 2, which is 10.0.2.0. Okay, so let's get started. So we're going to search for the VPC wizard in VPC. And we're going to launch the VPC wizard. And we want a VPC with public and private subnets. So we'll select this one and we'll hit select. And we've got to notice our CIDR block here is 10.0.0.16. So let's bring back our diagram here. So we've got 10.0.0.16, and we're going to create public subnet 1 here, public subnet 1 and private subnet 1. And just have a look and just check that these are correct. So we've got 10.0.0.24, which is our address of public subnet 1. And we have 10.0.1.0 for our private subnet 1. And then the next thing we want to do is we want an elastic IP. So we want to select in here and we want to allocate elastic IP address. And then we can go and click Create VPC. And that should happen fairly quickly. And then we can click OK. So if we were to have a look at what we've done so far, what we've done is we've done the left side here. So we've got a VPC, we've got a public subnet 1, we've got a private subnet 1, and inside of that we've got a NAT gateway sitting there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create some additional subnets. So we're going to go to subnets, and you notice here we've got our public subnet and our private subnet 1. And what we want to do is we want to create subnet. And we need to select the VPC. And we can see this one here, 10.0.0.16, which is the one that we want. So we can select that VPC. And then what we want to do is we want to make this public subnet 2. Public subnet 2. And for the availability zone, we'll select the second availability zone, East 1B. And CIDR block will be 10.0.2.0/24. And we'll create that subnet. Yep. Now we want to create another subnet, which is the private one. VPC ID, it's again a 10.0.0 subnet, VPC. And this is going to be private subnet 2. And our availability zone will be 1B. And our CIDR block for this one will be 10.0.3.0/24. Let's just confirm that. So we've got 10.0.2.0 for our public and 10.0.3.0. So we're doing these ones in availability zone B. And then we can create this subnet, private subnet 2. And there it is. So we'll have a look at our subnets now. You can see here we've got public subnet 1, public subnet 2, private subnet 1, and private subnet 2. So the next thing we want to do is we want to set up some routing. So we'll go to route tables. So to know which route table to use, we first need to know the VPC ID, because you can see here's the VPCs here. So if we go to your VPCs, we can see here that our VPC is this one here, which ends in 580, 09580. So if we go back to route tables, we can see here that 09580, and we want the route table that's got main equals yes. So this one's main equals no. So we want this one because this is for route table, this is for VPC 580, but it's got main equals yes. So that's the one we want to work with. So we select this one, and in the lower pane, we want to go to routes, and note that the destination 10.0.0.0 or 0.0.0.0 is set to target NAT. So that's going to our NAT gateway. So what we want to do is we might want to mark this as our private route table. So we'll click in here and we'll say private route table and save. So this is our private route table. It's going to the NAT gateway. So we go to this tab now, the Subnet Associations tab, and we'll now associate this private route table with the private subnets. So we'll click on Edit Subnet Associations, and we can select private subnet 1 and private subnet 2, and then we can click Save Associations. So what we've done is we've got our private route table, which uses the NAT gateway, and what we've done is we've associated our two private subnets with that private route table. So the next thing we want to do is go to the within the same VPC, we want to click on this one, which is the other one, and notice that this one is main equals no. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and we're going to click in here and we're going to go public route table. So we're going to set this as our name as our public route table. So then we go to the routes, and we notice that this one here, 0.0.0.0, excuse me, is associated with an internet gateway. So our public routes, our public subnets are going to use the internet gateway, whereas our private subnets will use the NAT gateway. So here what we're going to do is we're going to go to subnet associations, and we'll edit subnet associations here, and we'll select public subnet 1 and public subnet 2. So we've got our 2 public subnets. Yep. And we can save these associations. So now what we've done is we've associated our 2 public subnets with our public route table, which routes via, which has a default route using the internet gateway. And we've associated our 2 private subnets with our private route table, which has our default route using a NAT gateway. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a VPC security group. So what we'll do is we'll go down to security groups here, and we're going to create security groups. So we'll create a security group, and we'll call this our web security group. Security group. And we'll just say enable HTTP access. And what we want to do then is we want to select the right VPC, which is this one, 10.0.0.0, ending in 580. And in our inbound rules, we're going to add a rule. And we're going to type in here, it's going to be a HTTP rule, which is going to allow port 80. And our source is going to be from anywhere, so 0.0.0.0. And we'll just say permit web access. And we'll add that rule. So we'll go down to the bottom of the page, and what we'll do is we'll create this security group. Oops, we don't need this one. And we'll create that security group. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to launch a web server instance. And so to do that, what we need to do is we need to go to our EC2 part of the console. So we'll go to EC2. And then we'll go to launch instance. And we'll just choose the free tier AMI and hit select. And we'll go for T2 Micro, which is our free tier one. And next we'll configure the instance details. So we'll leave that at defaults. So the network we want is we want to select our VPC, which I think was 580 if I'm correct. And our subnet, we want, I'm going to put this into, let's just check. I'm going to put this into public subnet 2. So instead of public subnet 1, we're going to select public subnet 2. Now it needs to be a public subnet because it's a web server. So we're going to use, it needs public access, and we've put our security group to allow HTTP coming in to our public subnets. So we need to put in public subnet. So I'll put in public subnet 2. Auto assign an IP address. So we'll enable, so we can grab a public IP for that instance. And then we want to go to the advanced details. And down in advanced details here, we want to fire up a UserData script. So we've got some UserData script here that we're going to use. So what we'll do is we'll paste that in there, and we'll have a look at it, what we're doing. So the first thing, it's a shell script, a bash script. And first of all, it's going to install, using Yum, the Yum installer, it's going to install HTTPD or Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So we're basically setting up a LAMP server here. Then we're going to download our files. So we're going to use wget, and we're going to go to download this wget, this zip file. Then we're going to unzip the zip file. So unzip, and we're going to unzip that into the web root of the Apache web server via www.html. Then we're going to turn the web server on using check config httpd on, and then we're going to start the HTTP service. So we're going to start the web server service. Okay. So by putting this into UserData, what it means is that this script will execute every time the instance is started. So UserData is really useful because we can run this script every time the instance is started. So if we were to stop the instance and restart the instance, as the instance starts up, it would rerun this script. So it would re-download the latest version of our web app for using our wget. It would install Apache, download the latest version of the web app, and start the web server. So next thing we need to look at is add storage. So we'll just use the default GP2 storage. That will be fine. Then we'll go to add tags. And if we wanted to add tags, we could. Oh, we're going to add a tag. Yep, so we'll add a tag. So we'll use the key name. And for the value, we'll put web server 1. And next thing we'll do is configure our security group. So here we can use an existing security group. So we've got our web security group, which we've created, which we can use. And that will allow HTTP access to this web server. And you can see here we've got, this is our security group. So we've got permit web access, which is what we want. And let's say review and launch. Now, because port 22 is not open, we can't connect to this instance, but that doesn't matter. It's just for testing. But in what we would do is we want to SSH for management purposes into this instance. So we would need to connect via port 22 somehow. But in this case, we don't need to do that. So we'll just hit continue. And we can review everything we've set up. Block EBS, port 80 is accessible, and then we can click launch. So what we can do is we can choose an existing key pair. And we've got a pair called vote key. And we'll just say I acknowledge. And we'll launch the instance. So let's go and view instances. And we can see here that our instance state web server 1, here it is. Its instance state is pending. It's in US East 1B, which you would expect because what we've done is we've put it into availability zone B. Yep, so it's in our second availability zone, and it's our web server instance in our public subnet 2, and we've got our security group, which we're using. So that's coming up. So now it's running. So now our instance is running. So what we want to do is we want to select that web server instance, and so what we want to do is we've got our public IPv4 DNS, and So let's copy that. So what we need to do is we need to copy this IP address, which is our public IPv4 address, and open up a browser and HTTP, because we're not using HTTPS, we're using HTTP, // and paste the IP address in with a single colon. And what we should see is we should see our website, and we do. So you can see here that this is basically the website that we've, and we can load test if we want to, if we press the load test button. But given that it's an EC2 instance, our current CPU load is 100%, so we're loading it up. If we go back to our management console, then if we were to look at the what's going on with the monitoring of this, if we wanted to look at detailed monitoring, we'd find that we've got a lot of CPU utilization because we're loading it up. You can see here that our CPU utilization is quite significantly increasing. Okay, so that's pretty much everything that we're going to do for this demonstration. I hope you've enjoyed it.